We've just seen how we can vary the volume and change it in different areas of the keyboard. Now we can do the same with the tone of a program, and filters can be used to chisel away at high or low end content within the sound. This will make it brighter or duller, and as we saw in earlier videos, we can even sweep a filter across the sound, and you can get these strange whooshing effects as the low end or high end is allowed through or stopped by the filter. Now the filters on the Kross have a key track control, enabling us to make certain notes on the keyboard brighter or duller than others. As we did with the volume, we can assign certain areas and have those areas produce more filtering effect than others. So we can create some really interesting sweeps in one area, but some less pronounced sweeps in others. Okay, press the menu control and go down to the P filter page and tab over using the page plus arrow, or page plus button rather, to the key track setting, which is the end tab. Now the screen that you get should look rather familiar. As you can see, you've got the numbers across the top and the zones set out across the bottom, as we had with the amp key tracking. The only difference is the int to A control, and that's set at 0 at this point. This controls the intensity of the filter on our sound. So let's set it to 99 so that we can really hear it working on our sound. You can use 2 filters on each oscillator. These are labelled A and B. Having 2 filters means that you can do clever stuff like removing the top and bottom of a sound and leaving the middle of it. You could even knock out the middle and leave just the top and bottom end. Now we're only using a single filter to keep things simple in this case, so we don't have an int to B, but you'll see that if we use 2 filters. At this stage, so that you can hear just the filter key track working, I'm going to turn off the arpeggiator and I'm going to turn off the amp key tracker. So I've gone back into the P pitch page, set the AMS source there to off so the LFO isn't affecting the pitch, and I've also reset the amp key tracking so that all keys are now sounding at the same volume as they initially were. So what you're going to hear is the result of the workings of the filter key tracker only. I just tabbed over to the basic tab and set the frequency to 18. Now we have a low pass filter in place which allows low end sounds to pass through the filter, and this filters out some of the high end. If you press some low keys, you'll hear that the lows are being allowed through, and as we step further up the keyboards, because that low pass filter is cutting out the higher end by only allowing the low end through, you're going to get effectively right at the top silence. Those notes are being cut off or filtered out. Now the frequency cut off is 18 on this one, so we've set that frequency to 18, and if we adjust it, you can hear the filter opening and closing. And at the bottom end, that almost sounds like a bass guitar because the high end has been taken off that sound, and only the low end is coming through. The low end below a certain frequency, and in this particular case the frequency is 45. You'll also recall that I set the key tracking at the top of the keyboard to -99. What that means is that that's being affected, that area is being affected most by the filter, and it's silent as a result. So if you set the filter frequency to 37, that's quite a subtle filtering effect, so change the filter type from low pass to high pass. Now you hear that the top notes are unaffected by that filter, but the bottom notes sound like they're being played through a telephone. That's basically because we've got a high pass filter which is allowing high end to pass, but sort of filtering out the low end. For some reason you can use two AMS sources to control the frequency of the filter. The parameter guide doesn't say why you might want to, but you could use the pedal as one AMS source to change the frequency of the filter, or the tempo control for example. Nice to have the choice. At the same time you might want the pedal to control, say, an LFO, leaving the tempo control just to adjust the frequency of the filter. So you've got this ability to have different alternate modulation sources and a variety of choices in how you use them. So it's quite a handy little thing to have, but why they're giving you two, not quite sure. The resonance of the filter can be changed to add the little fizzy blip that we saw earlier in the videos about where that filter starts to cut off. You get that. Rather than that, you get that little blip, and that's resonance on the end of a filter where it starts to cut off. If you set the resonance AMS to filter key track and the amount to plus 99, this is where it starts to get quite interesting. I've just gone back to the basic tab using the page minus button. If I play a few notes at the bottom of the keyboard while using the dial to sweep the resonance control, you'll notice nothing happens. But if I bring in the pedal, there it is. You can just hear that resonance peak, so you're getting those really squelching type of sounds that you get with the changes to resonance. Now that's down the bottom end of the keyboard. Let's do the same thing at the other end. I'm using the foot controller again. Now you can hardly hear any resonance in that particular area on the keyboard because I've set the key tracking so that nothing's happening at that top end. At the top of the keyboard the effect is not as pronounced as it is at the low end of the keyboard. That's because the key tracking's working and it's affecting the amount of resonance and affecting the way the filter works differently to what's happening at the bottom end. Now these amp and filter tracking settings don't work brilliantly on a single oscillator piano sound. I've only used that just to show the basic workings of the key tracking to keep it nice and clean. But with a little bit of imagination and a more complex patch to start with, you can create something quite clever that changes tone and volume in different areas of the keyboard, adding different AMS controls such as LFOs, pedals and so forth, and you can create something that moves all over the place. Now something I haven't managed to find on the Kross is pitch key tracking. This isn't something that would convince me to sell my Kross, but it's a neat feature that is available on lots of other synths. Pitch key tracking allows you to adjust the pitch so that at its extreme setting you could even have the highest pitch at the bottom end of the keyboard and the lowest pitch at the top. So you've got a keyboard that's back to front. Now why you'd want to use that, heaven only knows, but the most obvious option is to set all of the keys to the same pitch. Now, the ability to do that allows you to have, within a two oscillator synth, one oscillator playing back as normal with the pitch changing as you press the keys, but have the other oscillator sitting underneath playing the same pitch all the way through. Now if you imagine a bagpipe that's got a drone that plays the same note at the same time as you play the lines over the top of it, you can impersonate things like that. Feedback effects at the same pitch could be useful as well, and a lot of dance producers use this idea to produce sub-bass, which is really just a note that plays really, really low but plays at the same pitch under a normal bass note to make it appear fatter. Now I'm pretty certain that you can't do this on a Kross, but if someone could tell me different, then great. I'd love to be able to use it. The uninspiring piano sound I use for this doesn't really show off what this thing can do. So I'm going to use something to close this video that I believe is what the kids call a banging piece of house music. The drum preset I'm using says house, so I assume that's what it is. This is probably actually near a ground floor granny flat rather than house music, as I'm more of a classical and prog kind of guy. But you'll hear this drum beat and an arpeggiator over the MG bass preset. Now I've mangled the preset using all of the techniques outlined in this video and a couple from earlier videos. If you notice in particular the filter key tracking and the amp key tracking changing both volume and tone as I play notes in different zones on the keyboard. The foot pedal is controlling the frequency of the filter and the mod wheel is controlling the resonance of that filter. I've used an LFO controlling a 1 octave pitch oscillation. I've set the reverb mix to dry and have switch 2 controlling the depth of that reverb in the master effects. The preset has a chorus on it and I'm controlling the depth of the chorus with the sustain pedal. And finally I've created a pitch envelope which is controlled by switch 1. So this is a seriously complicated patch and there's definitely not a combi working here. What I've done is I've recorded the Kross directly into Cubase and I'm going to try and sync it up with my videos. Just to show what can really be done, I've got a MIDI cable linked up to the YS200 here by Yamaha, and I've got my JV 1080 in the setup.